Every romance story has a meet cute. It's the introduction of the two people. Then there are the challenges they face to be together. Once upon a time, an independent woman left a fiancé and some other life things to move in pursuit of a Yale graduate program. Just a few short years later, that same woman left gainful employment and moved back to the Midwest with no job and no prospects for one. Why? Well, she met a fella and she thought he might be the one. That's the short story. Hi, I'm Beki Fraser, an award-winning coach, author, and entrepreneur. I'm also a leader shaped by decades of experience, inviting others on a journey towards adaptable leadership and fulfilled potential. It may have become obvious from my stories that I have a tendency toward taking action. Sometimes I might look before I leap, and other times I am more intentional and downright methodical about choosing a direction. Gandhi is recognized for saying, "You may never know what results come of your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no results." That resonates with me since I'm rarely in the camp of being still and taking no action. Today, I have a surprise for you, a special guest. When I take a methodical approach to decision-making, this person is a frequent thought partner. He's also been helping me tell this particular story for some time, and it simply wouldn't be the same without him. I'd like to introduce my husband, Scott Fraser. We are about to share the story of our meet cute and where that took us. Earlier, I told you the short story, and now we can share our long version.
So I met my wife when my sister tried to pick her up in a bar. Well, why was I there? So a few years ago, we were in Connecticut for a close family wedding, visiting with cousins and relatives that I had not seen in a couple of decades. And as such, they see me, we're an adult, and the first words out of their mouths are, "We need to have a beer." So off we trot to the local bar, just catching up on, a couple of decades of lost time. And my sister is walking around just meeting people because that's who she is. Eventually, she discovers this woman sitting at the far end of the bar, looking like she's having a very bad time, and decides, I must go save her. And off she goes.
And on my side of the story, I had gone into that bar following a candlelight party. And for all you folks out there who have ever been invited to one of those parties where you want to hang out with your friends, but you don't want to have to buy things in order to hang out with your friends. And I did end up buying a candle, and yet I wasn't really excited to have been at that party. And I felt like I deserved a cocktail before I went home. There was actually a football game, and I was able to watch the game from inside the bar. So there I am, enjoying my scotch, watching the game, and a couple of gentlemen come up, and they just want to talk to me. And that's when my now sister-in-law saw me at the end of the bar, and what does she do? She does something that people don't typically do in New England. She came up, she slid her arm right across my shoulders and said, "Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long." Of course, we don't know each other. And I'm looking at her going, I mean, I've had a couple of cocktails, but I have no idea who you are. That's the inside voice. The outside voice is going, "Hey, hi." And she looks at me and she's like, "Hey, I'm over here with a couple of people. Like, you should just come over. We should just catch up a little bit." And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so I don't know why she's here. She's touching me. And that has not been an experience in a bar for me for a very long time. No one comes to save me here. And I thought, okay. So I walked across the bar and followed her. And there were two other gentlemen that were part of her group. And it was kind of interesting because everybody didn't look alike. They didn't look related.
So I'm above average height, fair-skinned. My sister is average to below average height, olive skin, dark hair. And my dear cousin is somehow even shorter than my sister. And so we look like quite the trio.
My natural response at this point in time is, well, he's kind of cute. The slightly above height kind of guy. And so I looked at everyone and said, "So, how's everyone fit together?" I will have you know that after many years of marriage, I have still not lived down that line.
She's not likely to. So we exchanged pleasantries and we're having a great time. And my cousin, who is somehow more open and loving and caring and social than my sister, decides that this this newfound duckling, hey, you should come to the wedding tomorrow. I think you'll have a great time. Now, this is a private family wedding in a family member's backyard. So we'll work those details out later. Oh, yeah, sure, that'd be great. Yeah, you'll have a good time. So we talk some more that night and kind of exchange contact information, and gets later on in the evening and decide, yeah, well, we're kind of over this place. I think it's time to go grab a coffee or something. So we go find a diner, have coffee, talk into the wee hours, all of us, and just a great time. A few hours later, after a couple hours sleep, everybody comes to realization, boy, we really can't have her come to a private family wedding. It's really it's not cool. Nothing against her. She seems delightful, but not really on the guest list. So I make the phone call, and, to my amazing wife's credit, she knew she couldn't come. So I call her up.
And as I answer the phone, I'm thinking, well, it's nice that he called. That was sweet. And no, I wasn't really expecting to attend the wedding, but thank you for calling. I still would love to see you, though, so maybe we could find a way to connect before you leave for the weekend. And so I invited him to go out with me that evening, and I said, hey, you could join me for girls' night. And so sure enough, he fit in with the girls just fine, right up until we looked at people and said, I think this is done now. And we decided to go hang out at a diner and have a bit more of a conversation. From that weekend, we ended up launching a long-distance relationship. He was here in Michigan, where we are today, and I was in Connecticut at the time. And so back in those days, we were buying cell phone plans based on minutes. And those minutes kept on getting more and more and more. We flew back and forth a couple of times. We met in the middle a couple of times. And that long-distance relationship created for me what became my inflection point in this particular story. My memory of that conversation was, hey, right, so I've decided to move. And I kind of like you, and we've been dating for a while. And I could move toward you, but if that's going to freak anybody out, then I could also move to this other location. It's just, if I go there, I'll be there for a couple of years. You sit with that, don't answer immediately. See, I knew him even way back then. Don't ask for immediate answer. Let him soak it in, let him absorb it. And my memory again is the next time we spoke, he had actually already been thinking about what the logistics would look like and had really started the plan for what it would look like when I would move there. So I guess I kind of got my answer.
I wasn't freaked out.
After we had talked about it, I had to sit with that and really make the decision for myself. What is it that I want to do in this particular moment? And I took a little bit of time. I ended up even moving in with a couple of friends of mine so I didn't have to do a month-to-month lease. That gave me that window to make that choice and create a plan. Ultimately, of course, I did make the move. Ultimately, he even asked me to marry him.
Spoiler alert.
When I moved to Michigan, I didn't have a plan in terms of employment. And I eventually found gainful employment, and it turned out that he was the one for me. Romance is great, but when you think about life and leadership, so what? Now what? In our relationship, there were a couple of things that we really consciously spoke about. One of those things was that we were two people independently choosing to be in a partnership. It was an early and very intentional discussion about how we would have our own things and yet also cultivate us things. That meant that we could maintain our own individuality and we could choose to bring ourselves together and really understand how we as a unit could be stronger than each of us independently. One of the things that makes me think about is, who is it that you want to have in your inner circle? What is it about how they think and feel and act? Because that has a really profound impact on you. And it's really important to choose those things thoughtfully. For me, some people had a misguided idea that I needed to be quieted and be put in my proper place. The phrase that I would hear would be they were going to tame me. That did not go well for them. My husband never considered, much less tried, to tame me or extinguish my fire. I'm a lot, and he still chose to have me in his inner circle. He didn't want to change me from who I was. We just experimented and learned our path toward partnership. That mattered at home and at work. I know I wasn't always an easy employee to manage. I saw what needed to be done, from my perspective, and would run full force toward it. Learning how to partner in the workplace required a few different experiments with varying degrees of success. Those experiences taught me more about myself and how to channel my emotions and choose my actions. One other thing about my husband is that he and I have a lot in common. It can be really easy and wrong to assume that we will always agree. Even when we do, we often travel a very different path to get to that agreement. When we agree, we don't even ask about the path that was traveled to get there. When we disagree, we focus on where we had agreement and build out from there to understand the differences from that place, starting with yes. Assumptions about we're obviously on the same page doesn't go well personally or professionally. It requires communication, effective communication. Work and personal relationships are not stagnant, and I learned to integrate my growth with my husband so we stay directionally aligned. In organizations, this is about balancing the often competing goals, priorities, and values. It's important to keep others' needs in mind. That said, it's not effective communication if you are not advocating for your needs too. Learning how to advocate for yourself is critical. When writing my book, I wanted to highlight that. So I wrote a chapter about, it's actually titled, Sometimes It Is All About You. In that chapter, I talk about what you want and how you communicate what you want to other people. So often we are influenced by what other people tell us that we should be, taming Becky. And really what we need to be thinking about is what we want, who we want to be, and how we want other people to see us. I also mentioned earlier that sometimes I leap and sometimes I make a methodical choice. In this instance, it may have looked like I just leapt without looking. In fact, I had friends questioning me about this, as good friends do. They even showed up to check in to make sure that I was making good choices. And I still took this risk to move for love. I also did a little bit of contingency planning when I took that risk to move. I had my plan A, the move, but I also had plan B and plan C. I didn't blindly leap without looking. I had responsibilities that I took seriously. I had life goals that meant a lot to me. Finding my guy didn't need to change that, and he'd have been horrified if it had. Again, in the workplace, you may decide to take a significant risk. Your colleagues may question you and check in with you. At those stages, it's really just our opportunity to be thinking about, is this a risk I'm willing to take? If I fall, am I willing to ride that fall to the bottom and then pick myself up to move forward? What are those contingency plans for if things do not go according to plan? Recently, my husband and I went to the bar where we met for a celebratory drink. It's been a couple decades since that introduction, and it was fun to go back. It turned out he absolutely was the one for me. And that meet cute started our journey together into what we believe is forever. What I truly learned in the formation and the growth of our relationship is how, in general, Relationships can thrive when each person is really thinking about what is important to them, about being in that relationship, and what they can offer to the other person. That's true whether it's a personal relationship or a work relationship. If we're only on the receiving end or only on the giving end, we start to feel that imbalance over time. We need to recognize how to effectively communicate with one another in order to really feel that what we're doing has purpose, has focus, and really can have the impact that we're wanting to have. And there's no problem with having a backup plan. Just because you've made a decision doesn't mean that you can't pivot. And those can be different kinds of inflection points in life. I've had to make a lot of choices throughout my life and throughout my career, and this wouldn't be the last one. And like I always say, that's another story. Thank you for listening to my story. My hope is that you will get insights for leading as you. If you know someone who would benefit from this episode, be sure to share it. Interested in connecting with me on LinkedIn? Drop me a note telling me where you found me. The link will be in the show notes. Okay, bye.